Welcome to The Cosmic Codex, exploring our science fiction universe. With science fiction author Brian Scott Pauls. AI voiceover created using MicMonster.
Hello everyone, I'm Brian, and this is the Cosmic Codex podcast episode for Thursday, August 27, 2026. Have a couple of new segments in this episode, starting with what I'm reading. So recently I have finished reading Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. It's a otherwise award winner. Our Boreality by Rebecca Campbell, a winner of the Ursula K. Le Guin Prize for Fiction. 36 Streets by T.R. Napper, an Aurelius Award winner for Best Australian Science Fiction Novel. The Black Hole by Alan Dean Foster, The Wind Through the Keyhole by Stephen King, and I'm currently reading For Love of Mother Not by Alan Dean Foster. So of these books, Light from Uncommon Stars is well written. It does a lot of things really, really well, including conveying the joy of music, specifically the violin, and uh, the experience of growing up trans in an immigrant community in the United States. These things, I think, add tremendous pathos to the narrative, and they are the reason to read the book. There are some things that I did not care for about it. It's kind of a mashup between a Faustian tale of a violinist who makes a deal with a demon, and a science fiction story, which is, more or less repurposed Star Trek. I'm a science fiction guy, and I didn't care for the science fiction story. I didn't think it really added anything. There was a romance element that was bound up in it, but that could have been handled differently. I wasn't sure why the science fiction was there. So I'll be reviewing this one in the future, and I'll have more to say about it then. Our Boreality by Rebecca Campbell is a book about the effect that climate change has on the northern North American continent, the northwestern part of the North American continent in the future. And it is a set of interlinked novellas sharing cast members and characters that are related to characters in other earlier novellas. Really, really good, not long, something that you can get through very quickly. And both comes across as a realistic assessment of climate change and yet somewhat hopeful to how the planet and humanity will respond to it. 36 Streets is a cyberpunk narrative, and it is set in a future war-torn Saigon in Vietnam. China has basically declared war on Vietnam, and the protagonist is a hard-bitten female anti-hero who works for the biggest gang in an area of Saigon known as the 36 Streets. This is, for the most part, very, very well written. It had a style that wasn't entirely to my liking. The author liked to have sentences that were just kind of snippets of the way that he would explain something. So instead of saying, the air was heavy with the smell of smoke, he would just write the smoke, would just write the smell of smoke in the air. And there were just many, many sentences like that. I found it disjointed to read. But the overall story was well done. I do think that some cyberpunk readers will think there is not enough cyber in it. It is there. Primarily takes the form of a first-person video game that you're immersed in via essentially direct interface with your brain. But in terms of uh, hacking the net, like there are in a lot of cyberpunk narratives, that really isn't there so much. The Black Hole from Alan Dean Foster. This was a guilty pleasure for me. I found myself missing some of the books that I had read as a kid. One of those was The Black Hole, which I really, really enjoyed reading. It was obviously the novelization of the movie, but I think, even though Foster was more or less following the beats of the script, I think he really went above and beyond, turning it into a true science fiction story, science fiction literature. Not out and out hard science fiction, hard-ish science fiction. I had to actually stop and look up at one point how he describes the interior of a black hole, and found that it did match the science of the time. And I thought that was well done, and that that validated what I remembered liking about the book, which is I learned some things in this book that became part of my understanding of the science of black holes, which turned out to be a pretty good foundation. The Wind Through the Keyhole. This is part of the Dark Tower trilogy. Dark Tower is a mashup, primarily a weird Western. You could call it a fantasy Western. It has a science fiction element. Science fantasy would probably be the best way to describe that aspect of things. But definitely in the world of the Dark Tower, it is basically what's left over after the collapse of a highly technological society, and those elements pop up in The Wind Through the Keyhole. And then finally, For Love of Mother Not, another Alan Dean Foster novel, another return to some books from when I was a kid, a young adult, that I never got around to reading. This one is the retroactive prequel to the Pip and Flink series, a couple of Foster's most well-known characters. Flinks is a red-headed young man with empathic powers. Pip is a mini dragon, basically a snake with wings who can spit an acidic venom from his mouth. And I'm enjoying it so far. It reminds me that, a lot of the stories that I like to read when I was a kid didn't necessarily have the weight of the type of science fiction I most enjoy now, but it's still a welcome bit of escapism for me. In the comments from Instagram on my post when I started 36 Streets, Jason, good friend of mine, wrote, "How goes your book?" And I responded to him online. I also talked to him on the phone. But Jason, as we talked about, I am getting back into working on my first science fiction collection, Probability Amplitudes, after putting this newsletter and podcast on hiatus for a year because I lost my job and I had to figure out, how I was going to reinvent my career. But I have gotten back into writing, trying to get back into a solid discipline of writing on a consistent basis. But it's reminded me that that is a piece that has been missing from my life, and I am looking forward to finally getting that project done. On TikTok, in response to my post about my article, Where's All the Antimatter? Catawire said, "Love your content, keep it up." And Philzilla said, "Look, it was a fabulous TV show. Can we just leave it there?" What Philzilla is talking about there is I talk at the beginning of the article about how the Big Bang should have created equal parts matter and antimatter. They are obviously referring to the television show The Big Bang, which I have to admit I haven't really watched very much of, mostly because I'm not the biggest science fiction comedy fan, unless it is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or Galaxy Quest. Also realized I mispronounced Catawire's handle. It is Cat Six Wire. And thank you for your encouragement telling me to keep up my content. Um, on my post about finishing 36 Streets, Mark Stout wrote, "Love your shirt. I'm a big Robert Heinlein fan, especially Stranger in a Strange Land. Grok?" A little explanation. I was wearing a Heinlein hero shirt when I made that post. He's referring to that, and Grok is not talking about the AI startup by Elon Musk that is now part of SpaceX. It's talking about the term Grok as it appears in Stranger in a Strange Land. And as I said in my response online, on other videos, I am actually wearing a shirt with a picture of Mars on it that says Grok. Mars is a central element of the plot in Stranger in a Strange Land. On the same post, Dr. Peepee said, "My friend, how fast do you read?" And I have to admit, I've never really thought of myself as being a fast reader. What I am is I'm a in. I read a lot, I guess is the way I should put it. I don't feel like I read fast, but I do read a lot, and that allows me to get through more books than maybe a faster reader would get through if they didn't devote as much time to it as I do. On my post about finishing Our Boreality by Rebecca Campbell, Derek Del Moral says, "Thanks for the rec from East Bay." Derek, you're very welcome from Kansas City. And on finishing Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki, J.S. Holloway said, "Love sci-fi, glad to find sci-fi content on here." J.S., obviously, I love science fiction as well, and I am glad that you find my perspective of value and hope you continue to follow along. Okay, another new segment is SF Community News. The big news this week is that it is the World Science Fiction Convention week in Los Angeles, LACon 5, and that means that the Hugo Awards are coming up on Sunday, and they will be live streamed on the LACon 5 YouTube channel. And I will put a link to the channel in the show notes. I can't put a link. I may not be able to put a link directly to the stream. I'll have to find out. But either way, I'll have a link in the show notes where you can go to find that stream on Sunday. And then a note about something I found out about last week, the Greg Bear birthday humble bundle. Greg Bear, science fiction author, passed away in 2022. He would have been 75 this year. And in celebration, Humble Bundle is offering 27 books for a suggested price of $18. And as always, they donate a portion of that to a charity. And in this case, they're donating it to SIFWA, the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association. So that is a tremendous price for a writer the caliber of Greg Bear. He is highly regarded, highly acclaimed. I personally recommend his duology, The Forge of God and The Anvil of Stars. It is a really good, the first one's a really good catastrophe narrative. And the second one is a very intriguing book about the descendants of some of the people in the first book, or at least the successors to those folks, who are traveling through space trying to find the source of the catastrophe in the first book. And what I remember about that is that I can't remember the exact year it came out, but it definitely came out before the United States invasion of Iraq in pursuit of weapons of mass destruction. And that plot point plays an important role in this book. The people on this ship find themselves investigating a potential source of the weapons that caused the catastrophe on Earth in the first book. And to tell you what happened would be a spoiler, so I won't do that. But reading that book and then later living through the United States invasion of Iraq and the claim that we were there looking for weapons of mass destruction. Felt a little bit like deja vu, and I think spoke to Greg Bear's powers as a writer and, portrays him as someone with a lot of foresight. If you or someone you know need professional tech guidance for your author, coaching, or independent publishing business, you are encouraged to check out my business, Cloudacy, where I provide chief technology officer services for a variety of clients. But one of the areas that we focus on is writers who have their own author business, because that's obviously a area of passion and concern of mine. So if you fit that description or know someone who does, you can find a link to more about Cloudacy in the show notes. All right, on to our main article, which is a critique of Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of the Sky. So this book is really a mashup of components taken from other older novels. And there's at least 5 that I've been able to identify. Andre Norton's The Stars Are Ours, Robert Heinlein's Orphans of the Sky, Frank Herbert's Dune, David Brin's The Uplift War, and Vernor Vinge's A Deepness in the Sky. So this is a description. It is not a criticism. T.S. Eliot taught us that immature poets imitate, mature poets steal, bad poets deface what they take, good poets make it into something better or at least different, as Eliot said. I wouldn't necessarily claim that Tchaikovsky is a better author than Norton, Heinlein, Herbert, Brin, and or Vinge, but he definitely takes these pieces and creates something unique with them. And I believe this book is worth reading for that purpose. It won the Arthur C. Clarke Award in 2016, and in 2023, the series, Children of Time series, won the Hugo Award for Best Series. So that was when the series consisted of Children of Time, the book I'm critiquing today, Children of Ruin, and Children of Memory. He has since come out with a new one called Children of Strife. And I have the trade paperback, which is the copy that I want, so it fits in with my others. And that is on pre-order. It comes out, I believe, in December or January. I will plan to review Children of Ruin and Children of Memory, since they were part of this series when it won Best Series. I may or may not review Children of Strife at a later time. So this story really starts out with one of the more compelling characters, Dr. Arvana Kern. She is in orbit along with her people of a planet that has previously been terraformed by humans. And she is embarking on an experiment where she's going to infect some monkeys with a nanovirus that will help accelerate their evolution into a sentient species. However, there is an act of sabotage. The monkeys are killed. The nanovirus is released into the environment. And not having any monkeys to latch onto, it proceeds to infect a number of other species. Most importantly, Portia labiata, which is the genus of jumping spiders. Kern puts herself into suspended animation so that she can come out of suspended animation at various intervals to observe how her experiment is going. Thousands of years later, an ARC ship called the Gilgamesh approaches the planet after fleeing a ruined Earth. At this point, because of long periods of suspended animation and isolation, she is psychologically unstable and is unwilling to share her world with these refugees who have, spoiled their planet. This tale is told in a back and forth narrative. On the one side are these humans on the Gilgamesh, and on the other side are these spiders that have undergone accelerated evolution into an intelligent species. Tchaikovsky has a background in psychology and zoology. That's where he is strongest from a scientific standpoint, and that really comes through here. Um, there have been a number of experiments done on uh, the Portia labiata species, and it's one of the species that we have studied the most, species of arthropod that we've studied the most scientifically. And these are the real spiders, are pretty smart already. They're able to select routes before they move when they're hunting their prey. They sometimes take detours that carry them out of sight of their prey. They are able to lose sight of their prey, but still keep their objective in mind. And they even, when they're hunting other spiders, specifically spitting spiders, will adjust their tactics to accommodate for the abilities of the spitting spiders. So most of all here, what Tchaikovsky does is he uses his background in science to create these very believable non-humans, but more importantly, a believable non-human society. These spiders, evolved spider species, are known as the Portiids within the story. And among other things that they accomplish, building cities and whatnot, they are also able to build a computer out of ants. They are able to train the ants to interact in such a way that they can, through their movements, etc., process data, and they serve as the computers used by the Portiids. Tchaikovsky also points out that because the spiders are used to moving in 3 dimensions, they are basically built for zero G, which comes into play later in the book. And this ends up being a really nice nod to Ender's Game, where Orson Scott Card has Ender learning to navigate in the 3D space of the battle school. And this is all captured in a phrase that Ender teaches his fellow students, which is when you're in a zero G environment, you have no up or down, but the human mind needs an up and down. And so therefore, the arena in the battle school is this, open 3D space with the gate for one team on one side and the gate for the other team on the other. This is the gates they use to enter the arena. And so in order to help his team orient themselves, he trains them in the mantra, the enemy's gate is down. So if you need to figure out what down is, you like home in on this landmark, which is the enemy gate. That's your down. Now you have an up, down, left, right, and you can navigate in a zero G environment. And Tchaikovsky seems to have that in mind, except what he's saying is spiders don't really need the same artificial framework that Ender gave his fellow students at the battle school. They naturally know how to operate in a 3D environment. One of the major problems with the book is that the humans are just not as interesting as the Portiids. I mean, they're not. Arvana Kern is the major exception. Arvana Kern is a very interesting human character until we get near the end of the book, where she still is interesting, but the question of her being human is pretty much open. The rest of the characters aren't interesting because they are neither likable nor memorable. And Arvana Kern stands apart again because in this case, she is memorable because she is so incredibly unlikable. So good job on Arvana Kern, but the rest of the human characters kind of suffer from what can be summed up with one of them, the main human viewpoint character is named Holston Mason. And I think this is a mistake. Tchaikovsky makes him a classicist, makes him an academic. He is basically there plot wise to translate the thousands of year old language that Arvana Kern speaks, which by the time this ship left Earth was a dead language. And I believe that linguistics is a fascinating field of study, but it does not make for gripping drama. And I think that that kind of captures the problems with the human characters in a nutshell. Of course, the humans also provide a familiar reference point for humans reading the book. So they're not just reading about alien spiders all the time, but really their most important role as a foil to the Portiid civilization. The humans still have all the flaws and shortcomings of human beings. They have left an Earth that has been destroyed by humans. Uh, Tchaikovsky really hammers this home with a phrase that he uses when he says, genocide of other species and of their own was ever a tool in the human kit. By contrast, the Portiids are evolutionarily coded for cooperation and harmony, even if part of that coding may have come from a human nanovirus. And the inevitable confrontation between these two groups really comes to a head in the form of a prisoner's dilemma, which is the thought experiment in game theory that goes by that name. And Holston imagines contact with the Portiids, which actual face-to-face contact is more or less delayed, until late in the book. And Holston imagines that contact as a prisoner's dilemma, meaning that the choices are they can try to trust each other and be wrong, or that one of them can betray the other. And the Portiids don't see it like that. In Tchaikovsky's words, because of their makeup, they see the same situation not as they see it as a Gordian knot to be cut through rather than to be bound by. And this, I think, is a clever way to wrap up the book's conflicting lines of reasoning. I think some people may find it an affront to what it means to be human, the resolution, which I'm not going to share because I don't want to spoil it for you. All this taken into account, Children of Time may be a good novel, probably not a great novel, but I do recommend it for fans of space adventure, epic future history, compelling alien species. I don't recommend it for anyone looking for a large cast of gripping human characters. All right, Club Codex for this month. This is our last week to read and discuss Arboreality by Rebecca Campbell, which I have finished. I've updated the chat thread with my thoughts. You can see what I've said and contribute yourself by going to thecosmiccodex.com, sign up for a free subscription. Scroll down to where I discuss the Club Codex section below the text of this article and just click discussion thread. You can get in there, see what I think before I write a critique about it. Share what you think, ask questions, whatever you want to do. Note, you don't have to have read the book or finished the book to participate. Just glad to have you part of the discussion. So don't forget to leave a comment on the article at thecosmiccodex.com. I appreciate all of you taking the time to read or listen, however you follow along with the Cosmic Codex, and I hope that you will all have a great week. Thank you and take care.
Artificial intelligence tools performed multiple tasks in the creation and publication of this podcast. Please share your thoughts about this episode by commenting online in the original article at thecosmiccodex.com. You can also find source links in the online text. Don't miss an article. Subscribe today to the Cosmic Codex email newsletter at thecosmiccodex.com. Thank you for listening.